the morning sun gently reaches the meadow, warming the cool and damp spring earth. Here, a single tulip stands tall, wrapped tightly against the morning chill. Notice the perfectly smooth surface of these petals, technically known as tepals. They form a tightly closed cup, protecting the delicate reproductive organs safely inside. As the ambient spring temperature slowly rises, a microscopic shift begins to occur. We are directly witnessing thermonasty, a botanical movement driven purely by rising heat. Look very closely at the base, exactly where the tepal meets the stem. Deep inside these green layers, cells are rapidly absorbing pure water from below. This creates immense internal turgor pressure, stretching the microscopic cell walls incredibly thin. The specialized cells on the inner surface expand much faster than the outer ones. This uneven cellular growth forces the petals to gently curve outward and finally open. Warm sunlight catches the waxy cuticle, a vital protective layer preventing rapid water loss. Tiny crystalline droplets of morning dew magnify the intricate cellular epidermis hidden just beneath. The elegant tulip is now fully receptive, quietly basking in the bright morning light. A quiet masterpiece of internal fluid dynamics, unfolding slowly in the pristine natural world. Moving deep inside the vivid red cup, we discover the intricate reproductive center of the plant. At the very heart sits the stigma, a specialized receptor waiting patiently for genetic material. Surrounding it are the dark anthers, heavily laden with thousands of microscopic golden pollen grains. Each single grain is a biological masterpiece, designed to attach easily to visiting meadow insects. The bright midday sun pierces directly through the petals, illuminating the hidden architecture within. Notice the delicate branching veins, the xylem channels actively transporting mineral-rich water upwards. This continuous upward flow of hydration perfectly sustains the heavy turgor pressure of the open bloom, drawn by the vibrant ultraviolet patterns. A tiny native hoverfly enters the surrounding airspace. It lands with microscopic precision on the edge, creating a faint vibration down the stem. This gentle, mechanical disturbance dislodges a few golden grains onto the soft red surface below, beneath the elegant flower. The dark spring earth remains cool and pleasantly damp, invisible to our eyes. A shallow root network is silently extracting essential nutrients from the soil. As the meadow air slowly warms, faint traces of moisture begin to evaporate from the ground. Simultaneously, microscopic stomata on the green leaves release excess water vapor into the breeze. The tulip is now working at peak metabolic efficiency, thriving under the brilliant midday sky. As the afternoon progresses, the angle of the sun shifts lower across the open spring meadow. The relentless energy of the midday light begins to give way to a softer golden hue. Inside the thick green stem, the vigorous upward pull of water gradually starts to slow down. A microscopic loss of turgor pressure occurs, causing the rigid petal edges to soften almost imperceptibly. On the underside of the leaves, the tiny stomata begin their slow process of closing up. This vital mechanism conserves precious moisture, preparing the complex cellular network for the approaching cooler evening. The busy pollinators sense this subtle shift and begin to retreat toward their own sheltered resting places. The dark anthers have shed their heavy pollen load, leaving only a delicate golden dust behind. Looking up from the damp earth, the red canopy of the tulip glows warmly against the sky. The waxy cuticle now reflects a deep amber light, highlighting the velvety micro-texture of the epidermis. At the fleshy base of the petals, a reverse thermonastic response is quietly preparing to trigger. As ambient heat slowly dissipates, the outer cells will soon begin to outgrow the inner layer. A gentle late afternoon breeze sweeps through, swaying the heavy stem with a slow and rhythmic grace. The intense red coloration deepens, absorbing the final warm frequencies of the lowering golden afternoon sun. The entire meadow breathes a collective sigh, slowly transitioning from active synthesis to a peaceful botanical rest. The golden sun dips just below the tree line, casting long shadows across the quiet meadow. As the ambient temperature finally drops, a rapid cellular response triggers at the floral base. Outer cells expand with surprising speed, physically pushing the heavy red petals back inward. We observe the microscopic curling of the edges, the beginning of the protective evening closure. Slowly but deliberately, the magnificent open cup begins to fold back into a tight bud. The delicate internal reproductive organs are safely shielded, protected from the approaching evening chill. Inside this tightening floral chamber, the remaining golden light fades into a warm and gentle dimness. The surrounding meadow air cools rapidly, allowing invisible water vapor to condense on the surface. Microscopic droplets of fresh evening dew form, resting quietly on the now folded outer cuticle. The thick green stem remains sturdy, anchoring the sleeping flower securely to the damp earth. Deep underground, the shallow root network safely retains the residual warmth of the long day. On the resting leaves, the tiny stomata are now completely sealed to prevent any moisture loss. The red tepals overlap seamlessly once again, forming an impenetrable shield against the cool night air. Standing tall in the fading twilight, the tulip has successfully completed its diurnal botanical cycle. The pristine meadow settles into a deep, quiet, bathed in the very last traces of sunlight. The vibrant colors of the day have now retreated, replaced by the soft silver glow of moonlight. Beneath this gentle celestial light, the closed tulip stands perfectly still in the cool night air. A heavy droplet of midnight dew clings to the waxy cuticle, magnifying the silent cellular world. Though outward movement has completely ceased, a quiet biological process continues deep within the green stem. the plant has shifted from active solar synthesis to the slow and steady rhythm of cellular respiration. Stored carbohydrates are now being meticulously broken down, providing essential energy to maintain the delicate tissue, down in the damp and insulating earth. The root system absorbs microscopic trace minerals very slowly. This nocturnal nourishment requires very little water, allowing the internal turgor pressure to remain perfectly balanced, looking up toward the expansive night sky. The dark silhouette of the tulip reaches toward the stars. The waxy surface of the tightly folded petals catches faint glimmers of starlight from light years away. Every broad green leaf hangs in total relaxation, with microscopic stomata securely locked to prevent dehydration. A very fine layer of cool mist begins to settle, blanketing the dormant spring meadow in absolute peace. A gentle midnight breeze briefly brushes the tall grass, barely disturbing the slumber of the heavy flower. The thick, fleshy hinge at the base of the petals remains rigid and locked in its protective posture, safe inside this perfectly sealed botanical vault. The vital reproductive core waits patiently for the next dawn. As the night deepens, the solitary dew droplet slowly gathers more microscopic moisture, high above the sleeping meadow. Silver clouds drift lazily across the vast lunar sky. Beneath the surface, an invisible, symbiotic fungal network quietly shares vital nocturnal resources. Microscopic root hairs absorb these complex minerals, working in perfect harmony with the damp earth. This ancient subterranean exchange ensures the sleeping tulip remains perfectly nourished until morning. Along the sealed red petals, the waxy texture acts as an ultimate biological shield, viewed through the resting grass blades. The solitary flower stands as a silent sentinel. The ambient temperature reaches its lowest point, chilling the mist that hugs the ground. On the broad green leaves, absolutely no transpiration occurs in this deep state of suspension. Even a tiny native ladybug finds secure shelter beneath the vast green leaf canopy. A thick layer of nocturnal fog gently embraces the lower half of the strong stem. Microdroplets of this cold fog fuse directly with the resting epidermal plant cells. At the very apex of the bud, the tightly woven tepals point directly upward. The moon continues its slow celestial arc, painting the entire landscape in monochromatic silver. Time itself seems to slow down. In this profound period of quiet botanical restoration, as the night reaches its deepest phase, the lunar glow casts long, still shadows. The ambient temperature hovers at its absolute minimum, stabilizing the microscopic dew droplets. Metabolic activity within the green stem drops to a quiet, steady baseline. Every single cellular function is focused solely on preservation, maintaining perfect internal equilibrium. The tightly closed red tepals act as a flawless thermal blanket against the cold. Deep within the dark, damp earth, The root network slumbers in suspended animation. A profound silence envelops the microscopic world, where even the air feels entirely motionless. The thick layer of ground fog smooths out into a perfect, undisturbed silver sea, safely sheltered beneath the broad leaves. Native insects share in this profound botanical rest. Even the vibrant red pigments seem to quiet down in the deep nocturnal shadows. The sturdy cellular walls hold firm, requiring almost zero energetic output to remain upright. This is the ultimate state of biological release. A complete surrender to the night cycle. The entire spring meadow breathes in a slow, synchronized, and invisible rhythm. At the very tip of the sleeping bloom, a single drop of water reflects the cosmos, suspended perfectly between dusk and dawn. The natural world rests in absolute, undisturbed peace as the midnight hours stretch endlessly outward. The heavy dew slowly approaches its freezing point. Above the silent earth, constellations shift imperceptibly across the vast and clear lunar sky. Down in the cold soil, the complex root system remains in a state of absolute dormancy. Every microscopic pore is locked incredibly tight, ensuring not a single drop of moisture escapes. A slow, frigid breeze moves through the meadow, but the sturdy plant remains completely unfazed. The waxy cuticle hardens slightly in the cold, acting as an impenetrable biological armor. Inside the rigid green stem, the internal fluids are perfectly pressurized to prevent any cellular damage. The silver moon casts a long, sharp shadow, mapping the slow passage of nocturnal time. Notice the mechanical perfection of the folded base, requiring zero energy to maintain this protective seal. At the highest point of the sleeping bud, the overlapping tepals form a flawless aerodynamic shield, resting safely nearby. Nocturnal insects conserve their own vital heat beneath the sheltering leaves. Thick ribbons of silver mist glide silently, weaving through the damp grass with hypnotic slowness. Every single blade of grass is weighed down, carrying the heavy, quiet burden of the night. The magnificent red tulip stands like a monument, bathed entirely in cool, restorative lunar light. In this deep botanical slumber, the meadow waits in perfect harmony for the distant dawn. As the moon begins its slow descent toward the horizon, casting long, silver beams, microscopic ice crystals attempt to form on the outer edges. Repelled by the waxy cuticle, the tightly sealed petals gracefully resist the freezing midnight temperatures, protecting the vital core. Deep within the cells, a high concentration of natural sugars acts as a botanical antifreeze. Standing tall above the thickening sea of silver ground fog, the tulip endures the night, far below the freezing surface. The damp earth maintains a stable and protective warmth. The microscopic fungal network continues its slow, invisible transfer, sharing vital minerals in the dark. Above this quiet terrestrial exchange, ancient constellations rotate silently across the deep cosmic void. The broad green leaves remain absolutely stiff and motionless, conserving every molecule of stored energy, safely locked inside the dark floral chamber. A single grain of golden pollen waits undisturbed. The surrounding native meadow grass is now heavily coated, sparkling with thick, cold midnight dew. A solitary, perfectly round water droplet on the stem acts as a tiny lunar mirror. The fleshy mechanical hinge at the base of the flower holds its structural tension flawlessly. The vast landscape is painted entirely in shades of deep blue and glowing silver mist. In this state of ultimate botanical endurance, the sleeping tulip rests in perfect, silent harmony as the deep night slowly yields. The eastern horizon hints at a profound and quiet change. The heavy silver frost on the petals begins to sense the microscopic shift in the atmosphere. Deep inside the dormant cellular structure, an ancient biological clock quietly prepares for the coming dawn. A gentle pre-dawn breeze sweeps through, slowly shifting the thick layer of insulating silver fog. The dark crimson tissue of the sleeping flower absorbs the very first wavelengths of deep blue light down in the sturdy green stem. Fluid pressures begin a subtle realignment for the day ahead, beneath the damp and cooling earth. The symbiotic fungal network completes its nocturnal exchange. The vast spring meadow remains perfectly still, wrapped in the tranquil blue hues of nautical twilight. The fleshy mechanical hinge of the bud remains securely locked, but physiologically ready to respond. A single suspended droplet of dew mirrors the shifting colors of the expansive morning sky, hidden safely beneath the broad green leaves. Tiny meadow inhabitants continue their deep and restorative sleep. The impenetrable waxy cuticle has performed flawlessly, preserving every vital drop of internal moisture. Looking toward the distant horizon, a faint gradient of indigo begins to erase the darkest shadows. The elegant silhouette of the closed tulip stands resilient against the fading backdrop of the cosmos. The entire natural world holds its breath, lingering in this beautiful threshold between sleep and waking. The deepest blue of the morning sky slowly softens into a delicate pale pink. Microscopic frost crystals on the waxy cuticle begin to lose their rigid crystalline structure. As the ambient temperature gently rises, internal fluid dynamics awaken from their dormancy. Guard cells along the green leaf surface subtly shift to prepare for renewed transpiration. The very first beam of golden sunlight touches the apex of the closed bud. Heavy midnight dew transforms instantly, becoming tiny prismatic lenses of warm morning light. Inside the secure floral chamber, the dormant reproductive core senses the returning warmth. The thick sea of insulating ground fog begins to dissolve into the warming atmosphere. Tiny meadow inhabitants stir beneath the leaves, greeting the steady return of vital heat. The rigid green hinge at the base slowly prepares to reverse its nocturnal tension. Down in the damp spring earth, the root network resumes its active nutrient absorption. Broad green leaves stretch outward, ready to capture the abundant solar energy ahead. The tightly sealed red tepals imperceptibly loosen their protective grip on one another. A single golden pollen grain rests securely, awaiting the imminent arrival of diurnal pollinators. The pristine meadow completes its silent cycle, awakening once more to the brilliant morning. The morning sun climbs higher into the pale spring sky, bathing the vibrant meadow in warmth, responding to the abundant light. The red tulip stands fully open and completely receptive. Beneath the broad green leaves, microscopic stomata unlock and widen to their absolute limit. This crucial opening allows for the silent intake of carbon dioxide, fueling the metabolic engine. Sunlight floods the translucent epidermal cells, triggering a surge of fresh botanical energy. Deep at the base of the floral cup, special glands begin to secrete a rich nectar. This sweet botanical offering serves as a vital energy source for the waking ecosystem, drawn by the ultraviolet markers. A solitary native bee descends toward the vibrant red petals. It lands with incredible gentleness, immediately seeking out the hidden pool of morning nectar. As it feeds, microscopic golden pollen grains adhere effortlessly to its soft abdominal fuzz. The essential process of pollination occurs silently, connecting this single flower to the wider landscape. Sated and dusted in gold, the pollinator gently lifts off into the bright morning air. Meanwhile, the complex subterranean root network steadily replaces the moisture lost to the morning sun. Powerful capillary action draws cool water, pulling it up through the internal xylem channels. The heavy red blossom sways beautifully, perfectly hydrated and thriving in the warm spring breeze. As the morning advances into the brilliant heat of midday, the meadow transforms entirely. The harsh overhead light strikes the red waxy surface, reflecting immense solar energy. Deep within the green tissue, microscopic chloroplasts are now working at their absolute maximum capacity. They silently capture pure photons, using this radiant power to split water molecules apart. This invisible chemical reaction releases a steady stream of fresh oxygen back into the breeze. Meanwhile, inside the rigid green stem, a separate highway transports the newly synthesized liquid sugars. These vital carbohydrates travel downward through the phloem, feeding the hidden structures below. On the meadow floor, the damp topsoil begins to dry slightly under the warming sun. Just beneath the surface, a native earthworm slowly navigates the complex maze of roots. The tulip roots actively secrete sweet exudates, deliberately attracting beneficial microbes in the dark earth. These microscopic allies break down organic matter, returning essential nitrogen directly to the plant. Above ground, a sudden gust of warm midday wind sweeps across the open field. The heavy flower head sways violently, dislodging a tiny cloud of remaining golden pollen. Thousands of microscopic grains scatter into the bright air, continuing the ancient botanical cycle. Through it all, the perfect architecture of the tulip holds firm against the elements. As the relentless heat of the afternoon peaks, the meadow enters a state of quiet endurance, deep within the red petals. Specialized pigments called anthocyanins act as a natural microscopic sunscreen. They actively absorb damaging ultraviolet radiation, protecting the delicate cellular machinery hidden safely beneath. Down on the broad green leaves, the microscopic stomata begin to partially seal themselves shut. This critical biological reflex prevents dangerous dehydration, sacrificing a bit of photosynthesis for vital preservation. A faint heat shimmer rises from the meadow floor, distorting the bright green landscape slightly. Beneath the sweeping arch of the tulip leaf, a tiny pocket of cool shade survives. A solitary native ant finds refuge here, escaping the intense solar radiation of the open field. The surface of the dark earth begins to form microscopic fissures in the dry air. Deep underground, the root network works relentlessly to extract the remaining trace amounts of capillary moisture. The entire ecosystem moves into a deliberate lull, waiting patiently for the harsh sun to pass. The magnificent red cup remains pointed skyward, tracking the shifting angle of the solar arc. Inside the dry floral chamber, the remaining golden pollen waits for the late afternoon winds. A sudden, welcome draft of cooler air brushes past, providing temporary relief to the rigid stem. The shadows slowly begin to stretch eastward, signaling the gradual approach of the golden hour. The intense heat of the day finally breaks, giving way to the gentle warmth of late afternoon. Bathed in this softening light, the vibrant red petals appear to relax their rigid posture slightly. On the underside of the leaves, the microscopic stomata begin their slow and deliberate evening closure. The frantic upward pull of subterranean water gradually slows to a steady and calming rhythm. Deep within the phloem tissue, the rich sugary sap flows with a heavy and lazy grace. Shadows lengthen elegantly across the damp soil, painting the meadow in contrasting strips of gold and dark. The cooling earth absorbs the final rays, storing this thermal energy for the long night ahead. Down in the dark microscopic network, the busy fungal threads enter a period of quiet digestion. The entire landscape is now washed in the spectacular amber glow of the approaching golden hour. The waxy cuticle acts like a prism, catching the amber light and scattering it into warmth. Inside the floral cup, the remaining golden pollen grains glow like tiny illuminated lanterns. A solitary native insect returns to the plant, seeking shelter before the evening temperatures drop. It settles quietly on a thick green vein, finding secure footing in the microscopic architectural valleys. At the base of the heavy bloom, the specialized hinge cells prepare for the reverse thermonastic movement. The natural world exhales completely, entering the most peaceful and deeply restorative phase of the day. As the heavy amber sun finally touches the horizon, the sky shifts into bruised violet, the rapidly cooling ambient air triggers the outer cells at the base to expand. This precise mechanical response forces the heavy red tepals to begin their upward journey across the broad green leaves. Every single microscopic pore is now perfectly sealed. The majestic flower slowly folds its canopy, retreating from the fading twilight, deep inside the internal phloem channels. The day's synthesized sugars flow steadily downward, traveling past the sturdy stem. This vital liquid energy reaches the cool earth. Here, the hidden bulb safely stores the heavy starches, preserving them for future growth. The vast meadow sheds the last traces of gold, embracing a deep nautical blue. The perfectly sealed tulip bud stands as a solitary anchor in the shifting landscape. Cooling air condenses immediately against the waxy cuticle, forming tiny spheres of fresh dew. In the background, the blurred shape of a native moth begins its nocturnal flight. Beneath the sheltering leaf, the resting ladybug remains completely undisturbed by the cooling wind, high above the dimming terrestrial world. The very first ancient stars pierce the sky, bathed in this faint celestial light. The meadow ecosystem seamlessly transitions into profound rest under the vast sweep of the Milky Way. The resting meadow reaches its lowest metabolic baseline. The spherical dew droplets now sport jagged microscopic edges, as the freezing point is finally breached, deep within the frigid earth. Molecular water binds tightly to the intricate soil matrix. The symbiotic fungal threads remain incredibly resilient, insulating the dormant tulip roots from the deep chill. Above ground, the thick green stem relies on its dense cellular walls to prevent structural collapse. This profound state of suspended animation allows the solitary flower to endure the freezing lunar hours. Notice how the overlapping red tepals form a mathematically perfect dome against the harsh night air. Faint starlight reflects off the hardened waxy cuticle, illuminating a surface designed for ultimate biological defense. A slow and heavy layer of freezing fog drifts effortlessly across the dark meadow floor, safe beneath the foliage. The resting ladybug slows its internal processes to conserve vital core heat. The crisp nocturnal air holds zero moisture in suspension, rendering the microscopic landscape incredibly sharp. Even the internal flow of rich sugary sap slows to an almost imperceptible biological crawl, firmly anchored in the dark soil. The plant waits with endless patience for the distant dawn. The entire ecosystem shares in this unified silence, bound together by the steady rhythm of survival. Wrapped in silver light and profound quiet, the closed tulip rests in perfect ecological balance. The deep lunar night continues its slow and silent progression over the frozen meadow. Microscopic ice crystals lock together, forming a beautiful but dangerous geometric lattice on the petals. Yet, the resilient tulip remains unharmed. Its internal chemistry perfectly balanced against the bitter cold. The cellular walls stand incredibly rigid, acting as microscopic fortresses against the freezing night air. Standing perfectly vertical in the silver light, the flower embodies the ultimate botanical endurance. Down in the frozen topsoil, the bustling microscopic community has also entered a deep slumber. The dense earth holds its minimal thermal mass, protecting the vulnerable root network below. A single frozen droplet of dew captures a tiny pinprick of ancient distant starlight. The heavy layer of silver ground fog flattens out entirely across the sleeping landscape, tucked safely beneath the broad green leaf. A tiny ladybug waits for the distant sun. The remarkable waxy cuticle repels the ice, preventing the delicate red tissue from suffering frostbite against the backdrop of the rotating cosmos. This single plant represents a marvel of evolution. Deep inside the buried bulb, complex starches remain perfectly preserved for the coming morning. As the silver moon dips incredibly low, the shadows stretch to their absolute maximum length. The entire ecosystem hangs in a delicate balance, patiently waiting for the cycle to renew. The setting moon finally slips beneath the dark earth, leaving only the brilliance of the stars. In this profound darkness, the microscopic frost on the petals holds its rigid geometric shape. The thick green stem acts as a silent pillar, enduring the coldest hour of the cycle, safely insulated beneath the frosty soil. The bulb retains its precious core of carbohydrate energy, framed against the turning cosmos. The closed blossom embodies the ultimate patience of the natural world. Very slowly, an imperceptible shift occurs on the far eastern edge of the expansive meadow. Microscopic stomata on the broad leaves remain heavily fortified, preventing even the slightest moisture loss. In the subterranean depths, fungal threads lie completely dormant alongside the resting root network. Frozen droplets of dew cling stubbornly to the waxy cuticle, like tiny fragments of scattered glass, hidden safely beneath a frozen leaf. The resting ladybug conserves its final reserves of body heat. The flawless seal of the red tepals ensures the reproductive organs remain entirely untouched by frost. A faint atmospheric shift gently disturbs the heavy fog, signaling the very beginning of astronomical twilight. Deep within the plant's architecture, thick cellular walls hold their vital internal fluids perfectly stable, anchored firmly in the dark spring earth. The heavy plant prepares for the upcoming thermal shift. The sleeping tulip waits in absolute tranquility, suspended in the final moments of the deep night. A faint and beautiful indigo hue finally begins to dissolve the deepest edge of night. The sharp geometric frost on the petals catches this first subtle wave of returning light. Microscopic ice structures slowly lose their rigid edge, anticipating the gradual return of thermal energy. Inside the sealed green leaves, The dormant cellular engine prepares for the impending solar cycle. A very faint morning breeze stirs the heavy mist, initiating the slow dispersal of the fog. Frozen dew droplets begin a microscopic thaw, transforming back into perfectly clear liquid spheres, deep within the warming earth. The root network senses this delicate upward shift in temperature. The mechanical hinge at the floral base begins to prime its cells for upward expansion. The vast meadow emerges from the dark, painted in the cool and soothing tones of twilight, sheltered beneath the broad foliage. The resting ladybug twitches a single tiny antenna in response. The deep crimson tissue of the flower absorbs the cool blue frequencies of the nautical dawn. The tightly sealed protective dome remains perfectly intact until the sun officially crests the horizon, standing resilient amidst the swirling mist. The elegant tulip has successfully survived the freezing cycle. Internal sap pathways begin to thaw, allowing the rich sugars to flow more freely once again. The eastern horizon slowly brightens, promising the imminent arrival of a brilliant new spring day. The deep indigo sky finally breaks, revealing the soft and warming pink hues of civil twilight. Perfectly clear dew droplets mirror the pastel horizon, signaling the return of vital solar radiation. At the structural base of the flower, the green hinge cells begin to rapidly absorb moisture. This rapid cellular intake generates immense internal pressure, preparing the physical mechanism for outward expansion. The tightly woven red tepals respond to the pressure, imperceptibly loosening their nocturnal protective grip. The rigid waxy cuticle slightly softens in the morning air, regaining its flexible botanical resilience. Surrounding layers of cold morning fog begin to slowly burn away under the strengthening light. The very first direct beams of golden sunlight sweep across the damp and awakening meadow grasses. A brilliant ray of pure morning light strikes the crimson surface of the resilient tulip. Beneath the broad green leaves, microscopic stomata cautiously crack open to sample the fresh air. Deep underground, the root network accelerates its intake of liquid hydration to fuel the dawn. Sheltered insects slowly rouse from their deep hibernation, stretching tiny limbs in the rising warmth. Inside the expanding floral chamber, golden pollen grains dry completely and ready for the wind. The elegant red cup gracefully folds outward, actively tracking the low angle of the morning sun. The entire terrestrial ecosystem breathes a collective sigh, embracing the vibrant promise of a new day. As the morning sun climbs steadily higher, the meadow enters a phase of intense biological activity. Brilliant sunlight penetrates the translucent green epidermis, reaching the microscopic factories hidden deep within. Inside these cells, green chloroplasts actively stream along the walls to maximize their solar exposure. This incredible microscopic engine demands a constant and rapid supply of subterranean hydration. Wide open stomata continuously transpire pure water vapor, creating an invisible cooling microclimate around the foliage, drawn by the vibrant crimson canopy. A native hoverfly enters the local airspace of the tulip. It expertly navigates toward the floral center. Guided by complex ultraviolet patterns painted on the petals, the tiny insect feeds carefully on the fresh nectar, while simultaneously performing a vital ecological service. Countless golden pollen grains securely attach to its legs, ready for transport across the vast meadow. The pollinator departs into the bright sky, carrying the genetic legacy of the resilient spring flower. Down at the surface level, the damp morning soil begins to noticeably warm under the sun. Sensitive earthworms slowly burrow deeper into the cool dirt, avoiding the rising heat of the day. The complex root system continues its silent labor, pulling essential trace minerals from the dark earth. A perfect equilibrium of fluid pressure holds the heavy bloom high above the surrounding native grasses. The entire ecosystem operates in flawless harmony, thriving effortlessly under the brilliant canopy of the sky, shifting our perspective down to the damp earth. We look up toward the bright sky. The majestic red canopy of the open bloom glows with intense, radiant backlighting from above. Sunlight reveals the intricate hidden network of green veins, the vital vascular system of the plant. Inside these branching microscopic highways, continuous streams of cool water flow relentlessly upward against gravity. As the midday sun beats down, thousands of tiny stomata remain open on the shaded underside. This massive exhalation of invisible water vapor creates a microscopic layer of refreshing, cool air. It serves as a brilliant botanical air conditioning system, preventing delicate tissues from severely overheating. Utilizing this localized shade, a solitary native ant slowly navigates the towering green stem. The microscopic texture of the plant provides perfect grip for this tiny, wandering meadow inhabitant. Everything is perfectly suspended in this bright afternoon heat, functioning in an absolute state of balance. High above the floral canopy, a thin white cloud briefly drifts across the brilliant solar disk. A fleeting shadow instantly cools the immediate microclimate, offering a momentary pause from the intense radiation. The rigid turgor pressure inside the petals responds almost immediately to this sudden drop in temperature. As the cloud quickly passes, the intense golden light returns to saturate the vibrant meadow once more. The ecosystem remains entirely unfazed, locked in a hypnotic rhythm of biological resilience and pure survival. As the afternoon sun continues its relentless assault, the meadow relies on invisible defenses. On the microscopic surface of the red petals, complex organic chemistry is hard at work. The intense heat triggers the release of volatile organic compounds, evaporating directly from the epidermis. These invisible chemical signals form a fragrant, protective aura entirely around the bloom, acting as both a localized defense mechanism and a powerful attractant for specific native pollinators. Its highly sensitive antennae decode the invisible molecular messages drifting rapidly through the hot air. Simultaneously, high concentrations of anthocyanin pigments inside the petals absorb the most brutal ultraviolet radiation. They safely transform this destructive energy into harmless, dissipating heat. Even the microscopic pollen grains are chemically armored, coated in specialized oils to prevent complete desiccation. To survive this massive, continuous energy exchange, the plant's internal water pump must run at absolute peak capacity. Thousands of stomata constantly vent precious moisture, utilizing powerful evaporative cooling to save the foliage. Finally, the brilliant sun slips just past its highest zenith, beginning its long, slow descent. Shadows on the meadow floor shift imperceptibly, subtly altering the intense microclimate once again. The towering red tulip has successfully weathered the peak thermal extreme of the day, united in their invisible chemical dialogue. The flora and fauna press forward into the afternoon. As the sun descends from its zenith, the relentless heat finally begins to fracture. The angle of the light shifts, casting softer, elongated shadows across the damp earth. Within the broad green leaves, the strained stomata slowly adjust their microscopic apertures. Evaporative cooling has successfully protected the delicate internal architecture. The frantic flow of water through the xylem stabilizes into a calm, steady rhythm. A refreshing afternoon breeze sweeps through the tall native grasses. The heavy red tulip sways with a renewed sense of vigor and botanical relief. Deep inside the floral cup, fresh nectar is secreted to attract the late-day foragers. A delicate native butterfly descends, its wings catching the warming afternoon light. It lands softly on the resilient petals. A feather-like touch on the waxy cuticle. A long, coiled proboscis unrolls, dipping into the microscopic reservoir of sweet energy. This elegant exchange of resources perfectly embodies the meadow's symbiotic harmony. The butterfly takes flight, leaving the vibrant crimson bloom behind. Down at the surface, the topsoil begins to slowly release its trapped solar heat. The entire meadow breathes a sigh of relief, transitioning smoothly into the golden hours of the late afternoon. The lowering sun bathes the entire landscape in a thick, golden syrup of light. The waxy surface of the petals catches this rich amber glow, turning a deep, velvety crimson deep within the leaves. The frantic streaming of the chloroplasts finally begins to slow. The immense internal pressures that held the plant rigid through the heat gently subside. Microscopic stomata narrow their apertures, anticipating the cool evening air. Against the deepening blue of the eastern sky, the tulip stands as a glowing beacon. The dark anthers release their final grains of golden dust. To the dying breeze, a single, microscopic sphere of pollen comes to rest. On the smooth, radiant cuticle, sensing the shifting light, tiny meadow inhabitants begin their slow descent toward shelter. At the structural base of the bloom, specialized hinge cells prepare for the nightly reversal. Beneath the surface, the complex root network decelerates its vigorous intake of moisture. Long, majestic shadows drag across the cooling earth, weaving intricate patterns. The magnificent open canopy of the flower hints at the very first subtle curve of closure. The very edge of the petal absorbs the last. Concentrated frequencies of the sun's warmth. The meadow drifts into a profound state of golden hour tranquility, slowing its grand biological clock. As the golden sun finally dips below the horizon, the meadow surrenders to the encroaching twilight. The sudden drop in ambient temperature triggers a rapid cellular response at the floral base. This precise physical mechanism forces the expansive red canopy to fold up gracefully inward, inch by microscopic inch. The botanical vault seals itself against the approaching cold. Halfway closed, the flower forms a perfect, protective chalice in the dimming meadow. Across the broad green leaves, the stomata lock completely shut to halt all transpiration. Down on the forest floor, the distinct shadows of the day melt into a uniform, cooling dusk. Inside the vascular system, the active flow of nutrients slows to a gentle, nocturnal crawl as the ground radiates its stored heat. The first wisps of evening mist begin to form. Moisture in the chilling air condenses immediately, painting the waxy petals in microscopic pearls of dew. As the diurnal world sleeps, the nocturnal shift of the meadow quietly awakens. Above them, the red tepals finally overlap, completing their perfect, impenetrable seal. The apex of the sleeping flower points silently skyward, fully fortified against the coming night. As the deep indigo of nautical twilight dominates, the very first ancient star pierces the veil. Bathed in this cool celestial light, the meadow ecosystem seamlessly transitions into profound rest. As midnight fully claims the meadow, the landscape is bathed in the cold, ancient light of a billion distant stars. The delicate microfrost thickens into a dense crystalline armor, encasing the waxy petals in solid silver. Despite the plunging temperatures, the robust green stem maintains its flawless hydraulic integrity. Far below the frost line, the dormant bulb acts as a secure biological vault, hoarding vital starches. The closed tulip stands completely motionless, a temporary terrestrial monument against the eternal turning of the galaxy. Microscopic stomata are now entombed beneath a thin layer of ice, preventing any lethal moisture loss. The damp spring earth hardens into a solid matrix, locking the shallow roots in a protective embrace. Even the microscopic fungal network pauses its relentless exchange, waiting patiently in the dark. A dense layer of radiant silver fog settles heavily into the lowest depressions of the sleeping meadow, deep within the microclimate of a folded leaf. A solitary ladybug reduces its heartbeat to an absolute minimum. A single, incredibly sharp beam of starlight pierces the darkness to to reflect off the impenetrable waxy cuticle. The overlapping red tepals form an aerodynamic dome, effortlessly deflecting the freezing nocturnal winds. Inside the plant's rigid cellular walls, specialized natural antifreeze proteins prevent the internal fluids from crystallizing. Firmly anchored and perfectly defended, the red tulip masters the harsh art of nocturnal endurance. Suspended in this frozen, silver-lit tranquility, the pristine ecosystem slumbers deeply. As hours pass, the majestic arch of the Milky Way slowly rotates above the silent Earth. Even the faint light of distant stars is strong enough to cast microscopic, shifting shadows across the frost. The layer of silver frost thickens in the dead of night, acting as a bizarre but effective insulating blanket. The impenetrable waxy cuticle successfully halts the ice, ensuring the delicate internal tissues remain fluid. At the base of the mighty stem, a collar of pure ice locks the plant firmly to the frozen earth. Beneath the frost line, microscopic soil bacteria have entered a state of complete diapause. The heavy ground fog lies perfectly flat, an undisturbed silver ocean reflecting the starlight, miles away from the cosmic chill. The buried bulb holds the pure potential energy of the coming spring. Above ground, the tightly overlapped tepals ensure not a single molecule of freezing air enters the core. The nocturnal air is so incredibly dry. The tiny ice crystals begin to sublimate directly into vapor. Even the nocturnal insects are forced to pause, clinging motionlessly to the frozen grass blades. Its complex, multifaceted eyes remain open, capturing the ancient light of the turning galaxy. Like a silent guardian of the micro-world, the tulip stands unwavering against the cosmic chill. The pristine meadow slumbers deeply, connected to the immense, slow rhythm of the universe, wrapped in starlight and profound quiet. The ecosystem waits patiently for the turning of the Earth. After hours of profound cosmic isolation, the eastern sky hints at a profound change. The relentless deep freeze is finally broken. As the microscopic ice crystals begin to soften, deep within the dormant stem, the biological engine slowly primes itself for the coming day. A subtle shift in barometric pressure sends a gentle ripple through the dormant sea of silver fog, anchored against the shifting atmosphere. The tulip remains a steadfast sentinel of the meadow. The remarkable waxy cuticle has survived the deepest freeze, entirely protecting the delicate tissue beneath. Deep below, the symbiotic fungal network senses the subtle shift and begins to re-engage with the roots. At the surface, the rigid ice collar gripping the stem begins to lose its frosty opacity, sheltered beneath the resilient foliage. The tiny ladybug has successfully survived the freezing night. Looking east, the faint band of deep blue steadily expands against the dying night. The microscopic stomata remain locked in an airtight seal, waiting patiently for the trigger of sunlight. As the twilight deepens, the nocturnal foragers finally come to rest. Completing their shift, the flawless aerodynamic shape of the sleeping bud holds perfectly against the chilling morning air. At the heavy base, the specialized hinge cells eagerly await the first true warmth of the sun, suspended in perfect anticipation. The meadow prepares to cross the threshold into a new day. The deep indigo canopy finally fractures, giving way to the soft pastel pinks of civil twilight. Microscopic armor of frost surrenders to the rising temperature, melting back into perfectly clear dew within the resilient green stem. Hydraulic pressure aggressively builds for the new diurnal cycle. Deep underground, the root network accelerates its intake, eagerly fueling the awakening giant above. The insulating layer of nocturnal fog begins to gently lift and dissipate into the warming atmosphere, responding to the subtle thermal shift. The flawless seal of the red tepals reveals a microscopic fracture at the base. Specialized cells fill rapidly with water, physically forcing the heavy petals outward. In its leafy sanctuary, the ladybug stirs from diapause, stretching its limbs in the gentle dawn. The surrounding ecosystem shares in the awakening, as native grasses catch the first ambient pink glow. Microscopic stomata on the foliage cautiously crack open, preparing to resume their silent exhalations. Inside the cells, dormant chloroplasts slowly begin to circulate, eager to harvest the incoming photons. A perfect sphere of morning dew acts as a flawless lens for the expanding pastel horizon. Driven by phototropism, the heavy bloom subtly angles its posture toward the coming light, securely inside the chamber. A fresh payload of golden pollen is ready for the day's ecological trade. Immersed in this stunning pastel glow, the terrestrial ecosystem stands ready to embrace the sun. The brilliant solar disk finally breaches the horizon, flooding the terrestrial world with life-giving light. Struck by the intense, direct radiation, the crimson tulip instantly responds to the sudden thermal spike. Heavy morning dew vaporizes almost instantly, rising from the broad green leaves in microscopic plumes, supercharged by the heat. The specialized hinge cells unleash massive hydraulic pressure. The magnificent crimson canopy gracefully folds outward, surrendering to the brilliant light of the new day, exposed to the dry morning air. The damp pollen grains rapidly fluff into a fine, weightless golden powder. Simultaneously, thousands of microscopic stomata dilate to their absolute maximum, inhaling vital carbon dioxide. The cellular engines roar back to life. Green chloroplasts racing along the walls to capture the incoming radiation. To sustain this incredible chemical factory, a torrential upward flow of cool subterranean water rushes through the stem, guided by complex ultraviolet landing strips. An early foraging bumblebee navigates toward the vivid bloom. The heavy pollinator lands, shaking the sturdy architecture as it eagerly seeks the rich morning nectar. it expertly unrolls its proboscis, drinking deeply from the crystal-clear pool of pure sugar. Its biological duties fulfilled. The magnificent bloom sways proudly in the warming spring wind. The waxy epidermis gleams brilliantly. An armor perfected over millions of years of evolution. The terrestrial ecosystem operates in a state of flawless, continuous rebirth, driven by the endless rhythm of the sun. As the morning matures, the meadow reaches its absolute metabolic peak. Millions of microscopic stomata tirelessly exhale fresh oxygen, a vital byproduct of the solar harvest. Deep in the warming soil, root hairs strip the final remnants of morning moisture from the earth. Above ground, the crimson canopy is stretched to its physical limits, capturing every available photon. Anthocyanin pigments work in overdrive, converting intense light into brilliant, mesmerizing color. The intricate web of life continues its relentless march. As foragers return to their subterranean colonies, at the very heart of the flower, a foreign pollen grain perfectly adheres to the sticky, receptive stigma. Instantly, a microscopic chemical recognition occurs, unlocking the profound sequence of botanical reproduction. A sudden thermal updraft catches the meadow, testing the incredible tensile strength of the green stem. As the temperature climbs, the familiar, shimmering heat haze begins to dance across the native grasses once more. Inside the biological factory, the continuous cycle of water, light, and carbon dioxide operates flawlessly. Even the smallest inhabitants take to the air, riding the warming currents across the expanding landscape. The massive surplus of newly synthesized energy is systematically pumped downward through the phloem, reaching the hidden bulb. This vital liquid sugar ensures the survival and legacy of the organism for another year, locked in this endless, beautiful rotation. The spring meadow stands as a masterpiece of natural engineering. To truly understand the triumph of this single flower, we must look at the invisible web that binds the entire meadow. Above ground, the tulip shares the canopy with countless other native species, competing for light, yet existing in harmony. But beneath the soil, a much deeper alliance is forged. An ancient mycorrhizal network of fungal threads connects their root systems, actively trading water, carbon, and critical chemical warnings. Supported by this invisible subterranean community, the solitary plant is never truly alone, empowered by these shared resources. It maintains its flawless waxy armor against the relentless solar radiation, even in the harshest heat. The collective canopy of the meadow provides critical layers of microshade. In these tiny, hidden valleys, a single droplet of morning dew can survive the midday sun. Above the canopy, the aerial network is just as busy, as pollinators transport genetic material across vast distances with surgical precision. The exact golden grain required is delivered to its new destination, its primary biological mission accomplished. The tulip stands as a triumphant monument of endurance. Yet its work is far from over. The microscopic stomata continue to pull invisible carbon from the air. The entire meadow moves as a single, synchronized organism. A vast green lung breathing under the sun. The soil below silently bakes, storing the immense thermal energy that drives this grand cycle. At the center of it all, the solitary flower remains, a masterpiece of evolution, endlessly turning light into life. As the intense meridian passes, the sun begins its inevitable descent toward the western horizon. Sensing the subtle drop in solar radiation, the open canopy initiates its slow, thermonastic reversal, deep within the floral core. The successfully transferred pollen grain germinates, driving a microscopic tube downward, carrying the genetic blueprint of a distant neighbor. It journeys relentlessly toward the waiting ovule. As the light intensity gently wanes, the frantic streaming of chloroplasts inside the leaves begins to decelerate. The waxy armor that deflected the harsh radiation now catches the rich, velvety hues of the descending sun. Millions of stomata begin their slow, synchronized closure, expertly managing the transition to evening moisture conservation. A refreshing draft of cooler air washes over the landscape, sweeping away the lingering heat of the day. The last of the diurnal foragers plot their courses home, their vital work for the meadow complete. The relentless hydraulic pump inside the stem eases, allowing the cellular structure to finally relax. A final, massive payload of synthesized carbohydrates flows lazily downward through the golden phloem, arriving at the hidden bulb. This rich sugar completely saturates the storage cells. A successful day's harvest. Above the vault, the damp earth cools rapidly. As the shadows of the tall grasses sweep across the surface, the magnificent floral canopy responds instantly, curving into a protective, elegant bowl. The entire ecosystem is submerged once more in the profound, triumphant glow of the golden hour. The golden hour yields to a fiery sunset. As the immense solar disk finally touches the western horizon, reacting to the rapidly dropping temperatures, the crimson tepals draw together for the final time today. Across the foliage, the stomata execute their absolute lockdown, entirely halting the flow of moisture. The diurnal insects recognize the encroaching shadows, securing their sanctuaries beneath the resilient canopy. Down at the surface, the soil cools rapidly as the direct radiation is finally extinguished. The subterranean fungal network decelerates its chemical trade, preparing for the long nocturnal pause. But deep within the plant's core, the microscopic pollen tube continues its vital, unstoppable journey in the dark. Above ground, the floral vault is completely sealed. A perfect, impenetrable biological dome. The waxy cuticle reflects the spectacular final act of the sun, painting the epidermis in liquid fire. The darkness of night rapidly consumes the meadow floor, leaving only the very tips of the grass in the light. The plunging temperature initiates immediate condensation, as the very first droplets of evening dew materialize. Deep within the blue shadows, the nocturnal shift takes over the meadow's airspace. Inside the stem, the massive downward flow of energy ceases, locking the plant into its resting metabolic state, silhouetted against the burning sky. The solitary tulip stands as a testament to biological perfection. As the final brilliant rays disappear, the meadow prepares to embrace the challenges and peace of the deep night. The last fiery ember vanishes, and the heavy blanket of nautical twilight is pulled across the earth. Without the sun's radiation, the rapid temperature drop violently forces moisture from the air. The thick green stem stands as a solitary pillar in the deepening blue shadows. Beneath the damp earth, the root network ceases its relentless daytime labor. Millions of microscopic stomata are now locked tight, heavily guarded by a fresh layer of evening dew. Even the nocturnal insects find a moment of stillness, clinging to the cooling native grasses. High above, the deep indigo sky gives way, revealing the first brilliant clusters of ancient stars. As the freezing point is breached, the delicate dew droplets instantly form jagged, geometric ice crystals. The magnificent bloom seals itself completely, an aerodynamic fortress against the biting chill. In the frozen earth below, the vast fungal network holds a faint, steady pulse of life in suspension, as the ground rapidly surrenders its heat. A radiant silver mist begins to pool in the lowest depths, protected by dense antifreeze proteins. The vital internal fluids remain viscous against the crippling cold. The damp soil at its base hardens like concrete, locking the tulip into a profound, frozen embrace. A single beam of ancient starlight reflects flawlessly off the microscopic ice encasing the botanical armor. Under the endless arch of the Milky Way, the resilient meadow begins its deep sleep all over again. In the deepest hours of the night, the slow, majestic rotation of the galaxy marks the passage of deep time. On the surface of the green stem, individual frost crystals link together to form a solid, impenetrable shield. Caught in the freeze, a resting ladybug is lightly dusted with frost, its metabolism halted in perfect diapause. The damp topsoil expands slightly as the moisture within it freezes, gripping the plant's foundation like a vice. The dense ground fog settles into absolute stillness. A perfectly flat, silver ocean trapped in the cold. A perfectly frozen dewdrop catches a singular beam of starlight, acting as a tiny, miraculous prism in the dark. The closed tulip endures the deepest, coldest hour, its internal vault perfectly secured. The smooth, waxy cuticle utterly rejects the encroaching ice, preventing lethal frostbite to the crimson tissues beneath. Safe from the cosmic chill, the buried bulb holds its dense core of stored solar energy in perfect stasis. the intricate mycorrhizal web surrounding the roots slumbers deeply alongside its botanical partner. Above ground, the leaf stomata remain entombed in ice, an absolute physical barrier against dehydration. Surrounding native grasses bow deeply under the accumulating weight of the heavy nocturnal frost. Even the nocturnal foragers have ceased their flights, clinging motionless until the ambient temperature rises. The great celestial clock continues to turn, dragging the Milky Way steadily toward the west, through the absolute depths of the cold and dark. The remarkable Tulip stands as an unwavering monument of life. After the profound stillness of the deep night, the eastern horizon whispers the very first promise of a new day. The dense armor of frost catches this faint, incoming blue frequency, signaling the end of the deep freeze. At the frozen base of the stem, the absolute rigidity of the ice collar begins to subtly weaken. Deep underground, the resting root network detects the faintest upward shift in temperature. The symbiotic fungal threads match this awakening, their dormant network beginning to pulse with returning life. Above the soil, a subtle change in barometric pressure sends a slow, deliberate ripple through the sleeping fog, standing resolutely amidst the shifting atmosphere. The tulip prepares for the climax of its daily cycle. The microscopic stomata remain locked in their airtight seal, while the ice above them slowly begins to bead into water. The nocturnal foragers remain entirely still, their shift ending as the dark sky slowly retreats. Looking east, the deep blue gradient aggressively claims the horizon, pushing the stars further away. Deep within the floral hinge, specialized cells begin pulling in the first microscopic amounts of moisture. Inside the vascular network, the frozen sap slowly thaws, resuming its vital journey through the plant. The protective waxy cuticle catches the shifting blue hues, acting as a flawless mirror for the changing sky. The apex of the bloom remains tightly sealed, a perfect aerodynamic spearhead against the pre-dawn chill, immersed entirely in deep blue twilight. The terrestrial world waits patiently for the final transition. The deep indigo canopy finally yields, giving way to the soft pastel pinks of civil twilight. The microscopic armor of frost surrenders to the rising temperature, melting back into perfectly clear dew. Within the resilient green stem, hydraulic pressure aggressively builds for the new diurnal cycle. Microscopic stomata on the foliage cautiously crack open, preparing to resume their silent exhalations. Inside the cells, dormant chloroplasts slowly begin to circulate, eager to harvest the incoming photons. The insulating layer of nocturnal fog begins to gently lift and dissipate into the warming atmosphere. In its leafy sanctuary, the ladybug stirs from diapause, stretching its limbs in the gentle dawn. At the base, specialized cells fill rapidly with water, physically forcing the heavy petals outward once again. Responding to the subtle thermal shift, the flawless seal of the red tepals reveals a microscopic fracture, The protective waxy cuticle catches the shifting hues, acting as a flawless mirror for the blooming sky. The surrounding ecosystem shares in the awakening, as native grasses catch the ambient pastel glow, deep underground. The root network accelerates its intake, eager to fuel the impending bloom inside the vascular network. The massive upward flow of cool water rushes to meet the morning sun, driven by pure phototropism. The heavy bloom subtly angles its posture toward the coming light. Immersed in this stunning pastel glow, the terrestrial ecosystem stands ready for its final, glorious rebirth. The brilliant solar disk finally shatters the horizon, flooding the terrestrial world with life-giving energy. Struck by this intense, direct radiation, the crimson vault instantly breaks its nocturnal seal, supercharged by the sudden heat. Specialized hinge cells unleash massive hydraulic pressure. The magnificent crimson canopy gracefully folds outward, completely surrendering to the brilliant new day. The heavy morning dew vaporizes almost instantly, rising from the petals in microscopic plumes. Inside the foliage, the biological factory roars to life, with chloroplasts racing to harvest the incoming radiation. Millions of stomata dilate to their absolute maximum, inhaling vital carbon dioxide for the synthesis of life. To sustain this incredible chemical reaction, a torrential upward flow of cool water rushes through the stem, standing victorious in the morning light. The magnificent bloom offers its resources to the awakening world. Inside the floral chamber, damp pollen grains rapidly fluff into a fine, weightless golden powder, drawn by the brilliant ultraviolet signals. A native butterfly arrives to complete the timeless ecological pact. As it feeds, countless golden grains attach to its delicate legs, ensuring the genetic future of the meadow. The messenger departs into the vast sky, carrying life to the furthest reaches of the landscape. A masterpiece of natural engineering. The tulip stands victorious, having conquered another brutal cycle. The vast terrestrial ecosystem breathes together, a perfect, perpetual engine of life, light, and resilience. As the sun reclaims its throne at the zenith, the meadow enters the profound phase of legacy. The crimson petals, having fulfilled their purpose as a visual beacon, begin to show the beautiful, microscopic textures of endurance. Deep in the floral core, the receptive stigma closes its microscopic channels, securing the precious genetic code. All available energy is now violently redirected, fueling rapid cellular division within the hidden ovary. The internal phloem highways surge, carrying the absolute maximum payload of complex sugars down to the roots, buried safely away from the sun. The bulb is now fully saturated, a perfect battery of life waiting for next year. Above the vault, the relentless sun bakes the earth, sealing the subterranean treasure beneath a hardened crust. The immense thermal energy radiates back into the sky, creating a hypnotic, shimmering ocean of heat. To survive this extreme environment, stomata physically restrict their apertures, choosing preservation over production. The flawless waxy armor now bears the microscopic scars of a life fully lived. A testament to its successful journey, the flower continues to serve as an entire micro-ecosystem, providing a hunting ground for predatory insects. A powerful thermal gust sweeps the meadow, and the majestic tulip bows deeply, completely in sync with the elements. Viewed from below, the crimson canopy transforms into a glowing, translucent stained glass masterpiece. This is the grand tapestry of nature, an endless, resilient cycle of energy, survival, and breathtaking beauty. And at its heart, the solitary tulip stands eternal, a perfect monument to the power of the sun. As the cycle progresses, the brilliant sun begins its long, familiar descent toward the horizon. The crimson tulip stands bathed in amber, an accomplished veteran of the meadow's extreme fluctuations. Deep inside, the green ovary has visibly swollen. Heavily pregnant with the genetic legacy of the species, empty pollen casings detach from the anthers, scattering like microscopic dust into the afternoon wind. Within the vast green leaves, the frantic engine of photosynthesis gracefully decelerates. The microscopic stomata begin to narrow their apertures once more, anticipating the evening shift. Long, majestic shadows re-emerge on the meadow floor, painting the damp earth in striking geometry, bathed in golden light. The inhabitants of the micro-world continue their quiet, vital labors. The immense internal pressures that held the plant rigid through the heat gently subside once more. The waxy epidermis transforms into a flawless mirror, catching the thick, golden syrup of the afternoon sky. A cooling breeze sweeps the landscape, and the meadow responds with a mesmerizing, unified sway. Deep underground, its mission is complete. The bulb rests, heavily laden with the energy required for the next generation. Above ground, the grand red canopy anticipates the coming dusk, showing the very first subtle curve of closure. The great celestial clock turns without pause, painting the western sky in a breathtaking cascade of gold. Wrapped in this profound tranquility, the meadow proves that every end is merely the beginning of another cycle. The sun finally touches the earth once more, igniting the western sky in a breathtaking display of liquid fire. Driven by the rapidly plunging temperatures, the crimson tepals fold inward, glowing like hot embers against the dusk. At the structural base, the specialized hinge cells release their water, gracefully pulling the protective walls shut. Across the broad green leaves, the stomata execute their absolute lockdown, securing the day's moisture. Halfway closed, the flower forms a perfect, protective chalice, guarding its precious legacy. The waxy epidermis acts as a canvas for the sunset, reflecting the spectacular final act of the day. Down at the surface, the soil cools rapidly as the deep, soothing shadows of evening reclaim the earth. The plunging temperature initiates immediate condensation. As the very first droplets of evening dew materialize, deep within the blue shadows, the nocturnal shift stirs, preparing to inherit the dark. Above them, the red tepals finally overlap, completing their perfect, impenetrable aerodynamic seal. The apex of the sleeping flower points silently skyward, fully fortified against the coming cosmic chill. The last fiery ember vanishes, pulling the heavy blanket of nautical twilight across the earth. Without the sun's radiation, the rapid temperature drop violently forces microscopic frost back onto the armor. A dense layer of radiant silver fog settles heavily into the lowest depressions of the sleeping meadow once again, as the deep indigo dominates. The very first ancient star pierces the veil, beginning the cosmic watch.